I remember the sharp sting of hope in my chest the moment Mom's name lit up my phone. Cake ideas? It was like an electric pulse, brief, unexpected, and utterly confusing. I paused, finger hovering over the screen. Could it really be real this time? Or was it just another scene in one of those cruel little revenge stories they used to play on me? The truth is, birthdays in the Jameson household were never simple. Growing up, mine felt less like a celebration and more like a performance, where my pain was the punchline. Every year I braced myself, half expecting a plate of cold shoulder and half wishing for even the smallest flicker of genuine kindness. But this year was supposed to be different. I just turned 26, and for the first time in years, I wasn't stuck living on their terms. 2 years ago, I'd left home, armed with nothing but determination, a modest freelance graphic design business, and a stubborn belief that I could build a life in my own image. I'd scraped by on late-night client calls and ramen noodle dinners, decorated my tiny apartment with thrifted finds, and slowly pieced together a sense of worth that didn't depend on their approval. Still, I carried a quiet tremor of insecurity whenever I thought about going home. In my mind, I saw Mum's polite smile that never quite reached her eyes, Dad's polite nod before he turned back to his lawn, and Melanie, my sister, the golden child, flashing that perfect grin and whispering, "Get ready. You'll never forget this one." It started a week before my birthday. On Monday, I found a small card slipped under my apartment door. "You're invited to your surprise party, Saturday at 2 p.m. Be here or be left behind." No signature, but I recognised Mom's loopy cursive. My breath caught at the words. Was this her way of apologising for the last 10 years, or was it a trap? On Wednesday, Mom called me every single morning. "What flavour of cake do you want?" she chirped. "Chocolate? Vanilla? Carrot?" I almost laughed. It felt bizarrely heartwarming. Later that day, I got a text from Melanie. "Dress up nice. This is going to be unforgettable." I stared at it, my heart pounding. Melanie, who once bragged to her friends that she had no idea what I did for a living. Melanie, who posted a picture of me in high school on her Snapchat story with the caption, "Is this how my loser sister looks today?" And now this. Thursday afternoon, Dad, who usually only spoke to tell me my hair was too long, sent a message. "Be ready by 2 p.m. Saturday. Dress up." No emojis, no explanation. That terse line felt more ominous than comforting. By Friday night, my nerves were frayed. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, a pale face that still bore the remnants of last-minute freelance deadlines. I rummaged through my closet and pulled out the blue dress I'd bought with my own savings, a simple knee-length number with a sweetheart neckline. I'd never worn it. It felt like a promise to myself. You deserve a little celebration too. I ran my fingers over the soft fabric and imagined how it would feel to twirl in it, to finally dance on my own terms. That night, I barely slept. In my dreams, the walls closed in around me, and I heard laughter, sharp, unkind, echoing off empty barn walls. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. When my alarm buzzed at 7 a.m., I forced myself out of bed and made a cup of coffee stronger than rainwater, hoping to drown the knot of dread twisting in my stomach. Saturday arrived with a bright, mocking clarity. The sun streamed through my blinds as if the world was celebrating someone else's perfect life. I spent the morning meticulously curling my hair, applying just enough makeup to look polished without seeming staged. I even rummaged through my jewellery box and found the delicate silver locket my grandmother gave me when I turned 10, a locket I haven't worn in years. I clipped it around my neck and whispered, "Here's to you, Grandma." At 1:45 p.m, my phone buzzed with a location pin. "Your ride is here, sweetie," in Mum's text. I grabbed my purse, Mum always offered to hold it but I wouldn't let her, and headed out the door, each step heavy with anticipation and fear. When the car pulled up, I caught a glimpse of Melanie in the front seat, arms folded and lips pressed into a tight smile. Dad sat behind the wheel, hands gripping it like a steering wheel at the state fair, steady, emotionless. Mom was perched between them, clutching a silky red blindfold that glinted in the afternoon sun. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too bright, and I knew in that instant that whatever was waiting wasn't going to be a birthday cake. Still, I willed myself to believe. Maybe this one would finally be mine. The morning sun was still warm on my face when they pulled up in front of me. Melanie's car door clicked open, and before I could say a word, Mom's hand was over my eyes, wrapping that silky red blindfold around my head. "Trust us, sweetheart," she cooed, voice dripping with a sweetness that tasted like poison. For a heartbeat, I almost believed it. My heart fluttered with a fragile spark of hope. Maybe this really was a birthday celebration. But the instant the blindfold covered my vision, every instinct screamed the opposite. The car hummed to life, and we were off. I felt Dad's knuckles whiten on the steering wheel as we rolled past familiar streets, then country lanes. Mom kissed my cheek, her breath warm against my ear. "You're never going to forget this one," she whispered. Melanie laughed, low and relaxed, like she already knew the punchline. I closed my eyes, leaning back, trying to steady my breathing. The rhythm of the road lulled me into a dazed silence. Then the car slowed, veered off the pavement, and came to a jerking stop. I heard gravel crunch under tires, the engine cut out, and a door pop open. "Okay, sweetie, get out," Dad said, voice flat. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Wait, where are we?" I reached for Mom's hand, but she slipped out before I could grab her. A door slammed shut. The engine idled, then revved, and the car peeled away. The blindfold was still tied tight, so I stumbled forward, the soles of my shoes sliding on loose dirt and rocks. Panic surged. "Mom? Melanie? Dad?" My voice cracked. Only the wind answered, whipping around me, carrying faint echoes of laughter. Not polite chuckles, but sharp, delighted guffaws. I yanked at the blindfold and threw it aside. Light flooded back. I blinked against it, heart hammering. Before me stood a ramshackle barn, its wood grey and rotted, vines snaking through warped boards. The door sagged on rusted hinges, just enough to reveal a dark, empty interior. No balloons, no lights, no people, just this abandoned husk of a building. I tasted bile in my mouth. "This is your surprise?" I hissed, voice raw. No answer. The gravel road lay empty in both directions. The laughter had vanished, but I could almost still hear it simmering in the air. Anger flared hotter than fear. I spun on my heel and sprinted after the car, but it was already a speck on the horizon. Dad's honk hollered twice through the open window before the car dipped below the rise. Melanie's voice trilled back to me. "Happy barn day, loser!" Every muscle snapped tight. My chest seized at the word loser. Have you ever been at the mercy of someone you love, only to realize they never cared? If you felt that sting, give this video a thumbs up. Or better yet, share your story below. You're not alone. I glanced at my phone in my purse. Mom had offered to hold it. Of course she did. I'd chosen to clutch it tight. It felt like the only link to the world beyond this horror set. My fingers trembled as I unlocked it, scrolling through messages, but no one had reached out. Not Dad, not Melanie. My screen lit up only with empty notifications. I swallowed hard and forced myself inward toward the barn's yawning doorway. Each step echoed on the creaky floorboards, and I froze. A soft crack, a splintering plank beneath my heel. My stomach dropped. One more step and I'd break through into darkness. So I backed away, heels clicking on rotten wood, heart pounding so loud I thought someone might hear it for miles. The air was close and still inside, thick with dust motes dancing in shafts of light. My breath caught in my throat and I shoved out into the open again. Panic mixed with cold determination. I couldn't stay here. I deserved better than this, and so do you, whoever you are watching. Have you ever been left stranded? Tell me in the comments what you would do. I turned down the gravel road, the barn shrinking behind me. My heels clicked against the hard ground for nearly 3 miles. Every footstep pressed into my skin, my calves burning, my lungs tasting dust. I walked until tears blurred my vision, tears I refused to let fall. Pride, or maybe stubborn defiance, kept them at bay. After what felt like hours, a beat-up pickup rumbled to a stop beside me. A weathered farmer poked his head out. "You lost, miss?" he called, voice gruff but not unkind. I nodded, voice tight. "My family dropped me off. I need help." He climbed down, offered me a bottle of water, and let me sit in the cab while he called a tow service. I sank into the seat, relief flooding through me so hard I almost sobbed. The hum of the engine was a small kindness, a reminder that the world still spun on somewhere, and that not everyone was cruel. On the ride back to the nearest town, he didn't ask prying questions. He just drove, keeping a respectful distance. When I offered to pay him, he shook his head. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and watch those orchards this time of year. Coyotes like to roam." I managed a shaky laugh, feeling tears sting, but this time for a different reason, not humiliation, but gratitude. At the town's edge, I called a cab. It took nearly an hour to arrive. I sat on the curb, the sun dipping low, and watched headlights slice through twilight. Every moment felt like a lifetime, but each one etched itself into my resolve. I wouldn't let them break me. When I finally made it back to my apartment, my heels thudded against the tile floor as I kicked them off. I sank onto the couch, drained, and let my feet breathe. My phone buzzed. 2 new notifications from Melanie's Instagram. She'd posted a photo of my empty chair at the barn, smiling with her champagne glass, captioned, "Best surprise ever, had happy barn day." I stared at the image, furious all over again. My chest tightened. But then something shifted, an ember of something stronger than fear or anger. It was the first flicker of the fire that would drive me forward, because if they could treat me like this, I'd show them just how wrong they were. If you're feeling that spark too, hit like and share this video so other survivors know they're seen. And if you've got a story, let's build this community together. I pressed my palms into my eyes, breathing slow. I wouldn't cry, not yet. Instead, I whispered into the gathering dusk, "They'll regret leaving me here. They'll see that I'm not a punchline." And in that quiet moment, I made a promise to myself and to every one of you watching that this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke to the soft glow of sunrise creeping through my curtains. My head throbbed with coffee withdrawal, but I forced myself up. There was no rest for the restless. Every instinct urged me to hide, to crawl back under the covers and pretend none of it had happened. But the barn prank had gone too far, and something inside me had shifted. I refused to let it define me. I slid into my favourite hoodie, one with a faded logo from a tiny design conference I'd attended, and grabbed my laptop. I needed facts. I needed evidence. While the world had laughed at me, I would arm myself with proof of their cruelty. I opened Instagram and scrolled to Melanie's post. A carousel of smug selfies, the abandoned barn in the background, champagne flutes raised. Comments poured in, LOL, best prank ever, your poor sister, and worst of all, heart emojis from people who knew me. Heat rose to my cheeks, my pulse hammered. I could feel the collective mockery, like 1,000 eyes piercing through my screen. But I clicked through, carefully, deliberately, taking screenshots of every comment, every hashtag happy barn day, loser birthday, every cruel remark. This wasn't just my humiliation. This was proof of their complete disregard for my humanity. It was only when I reached the last slide, where Melanie tagged Dad and Mom with a winking face emoji, that chills ran down my spine. They were proud of it. He'd given her the privilege of tagging him. He'd laughed so hard he felt the need to share it with his friends. My stomach lurched. I closed the laptop with a snap and glared at the wall. "It ends now," I whispered. I spent the morning drafting an email to Melanie, Mom and Dad. I detailed each step, from the trap of sweet text messages to the cruel abandonment to the global broadcast of my shame. I attached the screenshots and a demand for an apology, one that would be posted publicly on Melanie's Instagram story with equal prominence to her prank. But when I hovered the cursor over send, doubt crept in. Would they even care? Would they simply ignore me? Frustration bubbled up, and I shoved the laptop away. Instead, I grabbed my sketchbook and began working on a logo concept for the retreat I was going to open. Barnlight Retreat. The name came to me in a flash, light that grows from something dark, just like my plan to transform pain into healing. I doodled a stylized barn silhouette with rays of sunlight bursting through the cracks. My hands moved quickly, finding solace in creation rather than confrontation. By afternoon, my thoughts turned back to my grandma's lake house deed. I rifled through a small filing cabinet and pulled out the worn envelope. The inked signature of my grandmother felt like a lifeline. I traced her name with my fingertip. She had believed in me. Even if my parents never did, she had. I let out a shaky breath and tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket. A loud ping interrupted my reverie. My phone lit up. A private message from Ava, my cousin on my mom's side. "Are you okay? Mom is freaking out. She's getting calls from her friends. They think she's crazy. You planning something?" Ava's name, soft, kind, untouched by the bitter tone that ran through my immediate family's messages, felt like a breath of fresh air. I hesitated, then typed, "I'm fine. Thanks for checking." I didn't tell her my plan yet. I didn't want her caught in the crossfire, though part of me wondered if I should let her know, just in case. Later that day, I sat at my little dining table, a spread of renovation quotes in front of me, contractor estimates, permit applications, paint swatches. The lake house needed work, roof, windows, plumbing. It would cost more than I had saved in my business account, but every dollar felt like an investment in my own dignity. I closed my eyes and pictured the retreat. Women gathering in a light-filled barn turned sanctuary, sharing stories, forging solidarity. I pictured the barn's decayed walls replaced with whitewashed boards, soft curtains, plush seating areas, and natural light flooding through skylights. My phone buzzed again. This time, a notification from the tow company that saved me yesterday. "Hope you're doing all right. If you ever need a safe ride again, let us know." My chest tightened. The world still had kindness left in it. I stared at the message, grateful for the stranger pioneer who had rescued me from that lonely road. It buoyed me, reminded me why I was doing this. As evening fell, I drafted a short video script, my own raw confession. I set 30 seconds aside for a hook. Have you ever been abandoned by the people who are supposed to love you most? I was, and today I'm going to show you how I turned my darkest moment into the spark that lit my fire. I practiced in front of the mirror, testing different intonations until the words felt honest. Then I picked up my camera and filmed a quick clip, my heartfelt face, eyes glistening with vulnerability, voice steady with resolve. I posted it as a story on my personal Instagram without filters or fancy editing. For anyone who's ever been left alone in the dark, you're not a joke. I watched as a few friends sent support emojis. A handful replied with "We love you" and sending hugs. A small ripple of solidarity formed. I allowed myself a brief smile. Even if my family refused to see me as human, others did, and that made all the difference. Before heading to bed, I drafted that apology demand email again, but this time I didn't hit send. Instead, I saved it as a template. I would wait for the right moment, when I had the leverage, when I had the retreat ready and an audience watching, when the tables could turn decisively and publicly. I closed my laptop, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration. Tomorrow, I'd call contractors, I'd set dates, I'd pour every ounce of my energy into reclaiming what was mine. But tonight, I allowed myself a single thought of peace. This nightmare was giving birth to my future. And in the quiet of my apartment, I felt that ember grow a little brighter. The spark of revenge. Not the kind that burns others down, but the kind that lights you from within. I drifted off with that warmth in my chest, ready for whatever came next. I stood in front of the old lake house with the wind catching strands of my hair and the contractor waiting silently beside me. The key was cold in my palm. For a second I didn't move. This place, it had been my grandmother's heart, the one space in my childhood where I felt safe, even if only during those 2 precious summers I'd spent here. She'd left it to me when she passed, tucked away in her will like a secret gift, a piece of her soul she chose to give directly to me and no one else. And until now, I'd never had the courage to come. But after that barn, that post, that smirking caption from Melanie, I couldn't stay small anymore. I finally slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust motes shimmered in the sunlight, slicing through the high windows, and the air smelled of pine, paper, and a ghost of something floral, maybe her favourite soap. The contractor cleared his throat gently. "Ms. Jameson, want to walk through?" I nodded. "Yeah, let's get started." Over the next 2 hours, we moved room by room. The plumbing was functional but outdated. The wiring needed replacing. The porch was weather-worn. The barn, oh yeah, there was a barn in the back, was almost falling over. But I didn't flinch. I took notes. I nodded. I imagined. In every cracked tile and warped beam, I saw potential. This wasn't just a property. This was going to be my answer to every moment I'd been silenced, mocked, erased. When we finally wrapped, the contractor asked, "You said you wanted this place to be a retreat?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "A wellness retreat for women. Specifically for those who've been emotionally abandoned by family. It's going to be called Barnlight." He chuckled lightly. "Clever. Sounds peaceful, but strong." That's exactly the tone I was going for. Over the next few weeks, I poured everything into this place. Money, time, muscle, emotion. I used the last of my savings, took on more freelance work at night to pay the electricians and roofers during the day. I painted alongside the team, scraped wallpaper with blistered fingers, sanded floors with sweat dripping into my eyes. I planted lavender bushes by the front steps, my grandma's favourite. And all the while, I didn't say a word to my family. I didn't respond to the texts, the calls, the voicemails. First came Melanie's voice message. "Hey, are you still mad? That was just a joke. You're taking it way too seriously. We have family dinner this Sunday. Don't be weird." Then Mum. "Laurel, your silence is hurtful. We're still family. Let's talk. You're acting so cold. And by the way, I saw your name on some legal documents. Are you doing something with the lake house? That's supposed to stay in the family." That word, supposed, got to me, as if it was still theirs, as if I didn't count. Finally, Dad texted, "Don't make me get legal." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I ordered custom invitation cards, thick cream cardstock, gold leaf trim, elegant calligraphy. They read, "You are cordially invited to the grand opening of the Barnlight Retreat, an exclusive weekend for healing, reflection and empowerment, hosted by Laurel Jameson." I sent one to Melanie, one to Mum, one to Dad. I didn't send it as an olive branch, I sent it as a mirror. 2 days before the opening, I walked alone through the newly renovated barn behind the house, the one I'd almost ignored. It used to be dark, sagging, full of cobwebs. Now it was bright, warm, string lights wrapped around the beams, meditation pillows arranged in a perfect circle, a table held pitchers of herbal tea and a vase of sunflowers. I looked up at the crossbeam that nearly collapsed when we first arrived. Now, sanded smooth, it bore an engraved sign, "Your pain is not a punchline." I ran my fingers across the words. they still made me tear up. For so long I thought I had to earn their kindness, prove my worth, shrink myself into the version of me they could tolerate. But standing in that space, surrounded by something I built, I realized I didn't need their approval. I never did. They chose to throw me away. I chose to grow. On the evening before launch, I stood on the back porch of the lake house, sipping tea as dusk settled over the trees. My phone buzzed again, texts from other attendees saying they were on their way, excited, nervous. One message read, "I've never been somewhere where women like me are welcome. Thank you for creating this." I held the phone to my chest for a long time, heart aching in a new, powerful way, not because of pain, because of purpose. Tomorrow I would face them, but tonight I let myself feel the quiet. Tomorrow they'd see what the joke built, and I'd be ready. They arrived just after 10 o'clock a.m., exactly as expected, early enough to pretend they cared, but late enough to act like it was an inconvenience. Their car crunched along the gravel drive, sleek and smug. Melanie stepped out first in oversized sunglasses and expensive flats. Dad followed, jaw clenched like he was bracing for court. And Mum, she held a gift bag, probably from a clearance rack, and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. I stayed on the porch in silence, tea in hand, flanked by 2 retreat coordinators. The wind was soft. The lake shimmered behind me. I didn't flinch, didn't wave. Melanie gave a tight laugh. "Wow, you really went all in, huh?" Her eyes flicked over the grounds. "Cute. Is this where you hold your pity parties?" Dad stepped forward, already puffing up like he owned the place. "You've made your point. You're upset. But dragging the family through the mud in public, that's too far, Laurel." Mum sighed, stepping beside him. "Honey, let's not make this worse than it already is. Let's just talk, inside." I studied them for a long moment. 3 people who hadn't apologized, who had laughed while I stood abandoned in dirt and weeds, now standing here, demanding civility. "No," I said finally. "We're not going inside. You are." They blinked. "I've prepared something," I added. "It's part of the experience we offer guests, called empathy reversal. You wanted a tour, right?" They hesitated, but curiosity or pride got the better of them. They followed me down a stone path that curved toward the renovated barn in the back. When we reached the door, 2 staff members greeted them with polite smiles and offered each of them a silk blindfold. "What is this?" Dad barked. "Just trust me," I said, echoing Mom's voice from the car weeks ago. Reluctantly, they slipped the blindfolds on. I guided them inside. It was dim, quiet. The wood creaked under their feet, purposely left slightly uneven to recreate the texture of the barn from that day. I walked them into the center of the space and let silence settle. Then, softly, I said, "This is where you left me. Alone, blindfolded, on my birthday, for a joke." They stood frozen, the air tight around them. I continued, voice steady. "You called it Freedom Day. You posted it online. You turned my pain into entertainment. So today you stand where I stood, just for a minute." I removed their blindfolds one by one. Mum blinked, lips parted but silent. Dad looked angry, but beneath it, unsettled. And Melanie? For once, she looked small. "You didn't just forget me," I said. "You made sure I felt disposable." They didn't deny it. I stepped back and gestured to the engraved beam above them. "Your pain is not a punchline." And for the first time, I saw it land. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. That was enough. Tomorrow they'd be banned, but today they'd remember. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the porch like a blessing. I stood barefoot, sipping tea from my favourite mug, the one with a crack down the handle, just like me, flawed but whole. The breeze off the lake was calm, cool. For the first time in a long time, so was I. Then I heard it, tyres on gravel. I didn't turn around right away. I knew exactly who it was. When I finally looked up, there they were, Mom in pearls, Melanie in a white blazer like she was being featured in a lifestyle blog, and Dad already squinting like the sun itself was to blame for everything. They weren't just here, they were trying. They climbed out of the car in silence. No gift bag this time, just tight smiles and stilted posture. Mom stepped forward first. "Laurel," she said gently, "can we talk?" I raised an eyebrow. Dad added, "You've made your point, but airing family issues to the public, that's unnecessary." Melanie crossed her arms. "And naming it after the barn prank? Seriously, you're literally mocking us." I took a slow breath, walked down one step, then stopped. "You're not here to apologize," I said. "You're here because people are talking. You saw the article, didn't you?" Mom didn't answer. "You read the Northern Living feature. From abandonment to empowerment, one woman's journey at Barnlight. You didn't come for me. You came for damage control." They were quiet now. The porch felt warmer in the stillness. Then the front door creaked open behind me. Dr. Raina Morgan stepped out, our retreat's lead therapist, trauma recovery expert, and keynote speaker. She stood beside me, eyes scanning the three of them. "They're the ones?" she asked quietly. I nodded once. She turned to them. "This is a protected space. No guests allowed who bring psychological distress to our residents." Dad scoffed. "You think we're a threat?" Raina stayed calm. "You left your daughter in an abandoned structure blindfolded and posted it online as a joke. You are exactly the kind of people we help our clients recover from." Melanie stepped forward, voice sharp. "You're insane." I didn't flinch. Instead, I handed my tea mug to one of our staff and stepped down to face them fully. "You left me," I said, "in the middle of nowhere, on my birthday, and then you laughed." I turned to Mom. "You filmed it," to Melanie. "You posted it," to Dad. "You drove away." They didn't deny it. They didn't say sorry. "I don't let people like that in anymore," I said. "Not in here." I tapped my chest. "And not here." I nodded toward the house. Security had already appeared at the driveway, quiet, respectful, present. Melanie spun on her heel. "Let's go." Dad muttered something under his breath. Mom lingered, like she might say something soft, but she didn't. She just followed them. I watched the car roll away down the gravel road. This time I didn't run after it. This time I let it go. That afternoon we gathered in the barn. Women from all over the state sat in a circle, holding mugs, journals, tissues. I stood in the centre and told my story, not for revenge, not for applause, but because reclaiming your power out loud is part of healing. I ended with this. We don't go back to the people who buried us alive. We plant gardens over the places they left us for dead. Every woman stood. Not one clapped out of pity. They clapped because they understood. To the ones watching, have you ever been left behind by the people who were supposed to love you the most? Tell me below. Your story matters. And if this story made you feel seen, stay. There's more healing to come.